Welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And here we are, episode 39. And this week we visit Resident Evil 2002.
I was just thinking, how can I make a joke about that? We've just been watching Heat. We were just watching Heat, and we had a little bit of pizza, and we decided that in the Cast Me to Hell official movie, I will be played by Pacino, and Ipo will be played by De Niro. Now, we're going to be jumping into the 2002 Resident Evil, the first adaptation of the popular game franchise. And if you were with us last episode, you would have known that we went to see the new Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. And this is kind of a bit of a comparison piece, but also looking at that first attempt at kind of making adapting a video game into film. And just before, neither of us have particularly watched this for quite some time. And obviously, it is a relatively, movie-wise, I would say it is relatively a big franchise. I mean, there's 6 altogether. It did well in the box office, and especially with Mila Djokovic kind of effectively being at the forefront and being the star of all 6 films. You've got to give some props to that. But we both kind of said that it was much worse than we remembered.
Yeah, it was. I remembered it being kind of dumb, stupid, sci-fi, action-y fun.
Yeah.
With a little bit of horror. But yeah, I found this film really bland.
Yeah.
Like on all levels, like horror, action, everything about it was just like as white and clean as the building that they're in half the time.
Yeah.
Like it's like that. Like there was nothing. The acting, the performances. There's nothing really like majorly exciting here.
No, I mean,
I know it's weird to start. This is weird to start an episode by saying, "Right, stop listening," because this is bullshit. But I know there is a bit more. There is a bit to mine here. I know that this is not going to be like our longest ever episode because there's not a load to mine, but there are some comparisons. I also think talking about the way that this is kind of why was this the first Resident Evil? You know what I mean? When they're looking at it, it's very strange. Like it kind of as a film, it's.
I think as a film, it suffers very much from the. I would say that the late, more the early 2000s, very much took from the whole John Woo hard-boiled Matrix kind of vibe. It's more so with the Matrix, where we have a kind of, and it's done amazing in the Matrix. When they're in the Matrix, everything kind of has this green hue to it, and then when they're outside of it, and they're in the what is the real world, it kind of goes back to normal. And the whole of this film kind of has this strange blue tinge to it.
Yeah, and it has scenes where it's like flashback and then what's actually happening, and you're never quite sure of what's happening. And I can definitely see what you're saying about that. Like, there was Matrix comparison here, because there's a very much that kind of similar, like, we don't quite know what's happening, and the characters don't quite know what's happening half the time. And you've got and then even the action set pieces are trying very hard to be, again, a bland version of what the Matrix did really well.
Slow motion around that time where everyone, particularly Paul W.S. Anderson, was obsessed with slow motion and kind of heavy metal music playing over action pieces, and the whole
flying, like jumping around walls and things like that, and jumping midair to kick people and stuff like that. All of that stuff that was originally inspired by like a classic kind of Asian or like kung fu kind of thing, twisted in the Matrix really well. And then how many felt... To be fair, I told you that in anticipation of the new Spider-Man film, I was watching the original Spider-Man films. And to be fair, I was sat there the other night watching when I was watching the first one, going, oh, this is some of the Spider-Man scenes where he moves and stuff, like the one when he dodges the blade from the goblin mid-air, and it's like that kind of slow-mo, as it comes, and he even does the backwards bend. Yeah. And I was like, I didn't realise how much really how much action in general was so post 1999. How many films were influenced by John Woo or the Matrix kind of style.
Yeah,
it's like every action film in that era, no matter what kind of style you're going for, was that.
Yeah, and for me particularly, because I think I might have said this on the show, I don't know, but I only watched the first Matrix for the first time in a long since it was actually released for the first time, and I watched the sequels. And in that world, it makes sense because it's not a real world, so you allow the manipulation of the action makes sense in context. And in a lot of those Asian films, it was always it was very much a stylistic choice. But in this film, just the whole, for me, feels like a whole of a kind of a cheap imitation. And I think the problem is that it starts off interestingly enough. We open up with the kind of digital, I don't know what the right word, the digital intro, where it's kind of, it's the right over, where it's kind of saying about the Umbrella Corporation and what they're known for, but what they're secretly doing. And it kind of sets up a relatively faithful kind of adaptation, you think.
Yeah. We get, and as a quick comparison early on, we get a similar kind of thing in Welcome to Raccoon City, where it gives that. So at that point, it's very faithful.
And then we get the scene in the lab with the actual viral outbreak.
With the stylized flipping of the vial slowly flying through the air as it breaks.
Yeah, and the scene where the people get into the lift. I think that starts relatively cool, but again, it doesn't feel, for me, it teeters on horror / that kind of sci-fi, like you're saying. And we get this. I think it's an interesting setup, and I can't say that the wheels have come off the car straight away, because I think as a setup, it's not amazing, but I think it's okay. I think as a kind of setup, I don't want to completely shit on the film, because there are
some interesting moments. I mean, I would say, but like just to quickly link back to that whole Matrix sci-fi and the way it is. The thing is, though, and I think you were kind of getting at this, is like it's like, right, I get this inspiration, I get it, but why are we trying to force that film, that style, into this film, which, if we look at the source material, has fuck all to do with it? Like, when the fuck does someone do a flip or a backflip or a mid-air shooting thing in the middle of fucking Resident Evil 1 or 2?
And the thing, and like you're saying, so 2002, Resident Evil 4, which is when the series, I mean, you could argue Nemesis, but I wouldn't. But Resident Evil 4, Leon in Spanish Village, revolutionized the whole game with the third person over the shoulder perspective and the more action, and it shifted the series to action.
Yeah,
that was still 2 years after this film.
Some people still say was a little bit inspired by success, of films and like the action, and they were like, oh, maybe people want to see a bit more action in this franchise.
But that was Resident Evil at this point was still very much a slow paced.
That's why this is an adaptation of the first 3 games, and this does not match.
Well, it's not even an adaptation of,
as you said,
any of the games.
Nemesis would that's the closest to kind of a little bit more of an action or chaser kind of thing. But this is like not an adaptation of those games at all. This is like someone's taken Resident Evil and we're like, oh, they're given, like Paul W.S. Anderson was given this file and went, right, so this is the script. These are the ideas that we're thinking of. We want to make an adaptation of this game. And he's like looked at it and went, I like the name. Oh, the Umbrella Corporation. That's a cool idea. Yeah, that's about it. I'm done. It feels like someone who didn't even play the game and just said, "Oh, Resident Evil. It's got zombies. It's got some kind of virus. Umbrella." And then it's got a kick-ass female thing, but for some reason, even though they could have just called her, they could have just said Claire. They could have just said she was Claire or Jill. They could have named her, but for some reason, no, she's Alice.
Yeah.
like Mila Djokovic could have been absolutely fine as a Jill or a Claire.
Yeah.
Like she would have worked perfectly fine as an actress. In fact, I think kind of in a way she would have worked as like a Claire or something like that would have been fine.
Yeah.
But for some reason, no. Apparently, all of the characters in the original games are just
not in the film.
We don't need them. They're not in this film. Like I don't know. Is there a single? I don't even think they refer to Wes as the creator of the lab or the virus. I don't think there's even.
There's Spencer, but he's not Oswald Spencer, as in the creator of Umbrella.
Yeah,
it's just a character called Spencer.
Yeah.
So there's no real kind of there is what's supposed to be a mansion above. In the games, it's the nest. In this, it's the hive. Yeah. There's kind of what is supposed to be the mansion, but we don't get to see it explored at all. There's no horror that takes place.
Underground, basically, the majority of the whole time.
Yeah,
except for a few flashbacks where we see inside a little bit of one of the rooms and in the forest outside.
Yeah,
that's about it. I believe.
So the whole film just kind of feels very messy, doesn't it? Because I mean, let's try and stay focused and go for it.
Yeah, I mean, we're not as we said.
Yeah,
this is more comparison scene. We're not going like scene by scene, but like as I said, like there's that whole opening with the virus being released, which again I straight away had a weird nitpick, but I was like, I mean, I guess because we know the intention of what they were trying to do was kind of release it in a way or whatever. But why is the lab? The lab that vial gets thrown into is like, okay, this is a lab with seriously high virus resulting contamination that could happen, and it has fucking air vents. Like, what lab has air vents that are like, oh yes, it's fine, we can lock this down, except for the air vent where all of that virus can flow out? Because the idea is that it flows through the air vent and then goes onto that one guy who's like walking by underneath the air vent, because it kind of follows it through kind of thing. Like, that's kind of implied as part of it. It's like, that was just a straight away, like, what fucking logic? Like, I'm not saying there's logic in this film, but that was just straight away. I was like, that was the opening scene. And I was like, why the fuck is there an air vent in a lab? Like, there's got serious. It's like someone fucking dealing with Ebola and being like, oh, I'm just going to leave this to warm on the windowsill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like a pie wafted towards people. Like, there you go.
Here's Ebola.
Baked out the oven. There you go.
I'm going to leave
it to cool.
Yeah. I'm going to leave it by this densely populated area. Yeah. It just, and that's the thing, is I think as an adaptation, I just don't think it works. I mean, we get some. I'm trying to think of the stuff that I think kind of does work is. And it's such a shame, because obviously originally Romero was attached to it, and when I was in Cyprus I read the whole script and I told you about it, and it was a lot more faithful, and it's a shame that it wasn't done, because I mean there's some elements in here, like the zombies for instance. Whilst the first scene that we get the zombies in, the first zombie we meet is Cher. I will admit, we have the iconic zombie in Resident Evil which if you listen to the last episode, I love. Yeah,
you see a version of this in that
very
lab coat kind of bald-headed kind of guy. He's not really like this. It's not all the same. It's not the same recreation like in Welcome to Raccoon City. You've got almost a perfect little recreation of that scene, haven't you? Almost, almost perfect.
Almost.
Even the way he moves and turns and things like that, like. Whereas this, basically, I believe I just remember him coming down a hole towards someone, and that's pretty much it. He's just very easily, and
he's just coming down with an axe, and it's kind of like, I don't know. I remember this coming out. I would have been 10 years old, and my brother Dan went to see it. Shout out Dan. And as you know, like he would have been. I think he was 15, and this was a 15, I believe. So. I remember him going to see it, and he said it was it was cool, but he was 15, and this was the first time it had been to screen, so you kind of have that about it. And I don't know, to be honest, the whole I know I sound like I'm just babbling, and that's because I kind of am, because I'm trying to think of.
But this is what this film is. This film is exactly that. It is made for. Basically, your brand,
my brand,
your brother. I was trying to say brother and Dan, and it became Bran.
My brother Bran.
Your Bran. We've got a cool nickname now, Bran. Your brother Dan 15 years old go and see this film, this probably is the best film ever. It's got Mila Djokovic like pretty much in tight clothing or showing like her leg almost as close as it could get to just full on vagina.
Which is yet again a weird,
like the red
costume
dress kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like her costume, it literally is like the shortest dress ever. Like
on one side.
Like it literally, it's so weird. Especially if she's just meant to have come out of like being asleep in not being asleep, waking up in a shower kind of room. It's like, why was that the choice of clothing for you to get into? But yeah, that's what I mean. This is like action film. It's got some zombies when you're like still young enough that any horror seems like horror. You know what I mean? It's very much, and we talked about this as well. Like I mentioned about this being like Sony and things like that. That Sony has a good like for a company that makes some amazing games. They're also a company that has a film studio that seems to completely not understand games.
Yeah,
like we've had Silent Hill adaptations from them. We've had loads. There's Monster Hunter that there's so many different ones, and I can't think of a good one that Sony's ever done. It always seems to misinterpret it as turning a video game that's a horror video game into an action film.
Yeah,
and then not getting any of the suspense or thing. And also very, the new one, I believe it was Sony as well, but it's still very like, it's like they don't understand the source material, and at the same time they're also kind of the way that they like go about it. It's like, where did you get to this point? Like, why did you think that this was a good idea to do it in this way? It just like it does kind of boggle like how that studio seems to think that that's how a video game is, and that's what people want when people want an adaptation. And as we said with the last episode, Welcome to Raccoon City may almost be too much of a close adaptation for a general audience to enjoy it.
Yeah. There's
a middle ground somewhere to meet, but this is not any. The middle ground is closer to Raccoon City than it is to Resident Evil.
Yeah, definitely.
Resident Evil, as we said, we've got a few things that are slightly Resident Evil, but the other thing is I don't get is the lack of gore. There's actually a complete. I thought that this had scenes of gore, and it does have a few like slightly, but there's not actually a lot of anything like blood or anything like this that I remember in this film. It's really weird. Like apart from like one or two scenes, one with the liquor, and one with the and one obviously when we get the lovely salmon cubes.
Yeah, I like that, and that's it. Like we have this. I remember there being a lot more gore in it. So going back to we get this SWAT team, or the umbrella cleanup team, or whatever they're supposed to be. Which for some reason I'm sure there was a spate where Colin Salmon, he's quite a classically trained actor.
Yeah.
For some reason, is cast as this like commando.
Oh yeah,
Bond.
He was in several Bond films as a similar kind of like straight-laced kind of.
And I remember him being in Aliens vs Predator as well, as exactly the same character. I'm sure I remember him being in it, but it seems like the kind of film that he would have been.
But yeah, another one of these. Like this is what I mean. We got a lot of these around that time. Like Alien vs Predator. I guess that's another one because Alien vs Predator was like a video game adaptation, but also a horror
and a comic
sequel one.
Yeah,
but it was also one that was for two horror icons coming together. It was quite a bloodless film.
Yeah.
It was aimed, and these were aimed so much at a teenage market. It was like, come and see these, but you're actually young enough but you can get into this film because it's just a 15.
Yeah.
Or it's just a 12A. It's not an 18 like the films would have been, like the two separate characters. And the games were as well, yeah. So you can't play the game, but you can come and see the film. And it's like, where did these kind of watered down versions of these come? Again, I revisit that about Alien vs Predators. I remember seeing that on my 15th birthday, I think, or was it my 14th birthday? But they snuck me in, something like that. I think I might have got snuck in actually on my 14th birthday, but it was like a 15.
Yeah,
and I remember that being like the best fit, like the best thing ever at that time. And again, haven't revisited it recently. In my mind, it still is like pretty like. I know it's not great, but I also know that I had a lot of fun with it. But then I remembered having a lot of fun with this, and I didn't.
And that's the same. I remember having more fun with this film. And because the setup kind of, like we said, kind of works fun. The scene with within the elevator when the woman tries to crawl out, that's quite a fun little scene, and I think it sets you up.
Scene, yeah,
and I think it sets you up to have this kind of scene or this film which is going to have these kind of suspenseful things in. And I think when they're going through the when they're going through the labs, I think we get teased with some suspenseful stuff. Like we get the the offices all filled with water as they're walking through, and the floating body, and then the body waking up. That's a cool little shot. And my problem with this film is it's cool shots spread out across an hour and 40 minutes or whatever. And overall, it just felt extremely boring. That's my main problem with this film is we get the opening shot, and then when they get in, when we get into the lab, and when we get into the hive, whatever they're calling it, we get the whole bit with the, they're walking through the waterlogged lab, the woman's face open, eyes opening up. You feel, oh, nice zombie. That's quite a cool little shot, setting me up for something here. I wouldn't say it anywhere replicates the atmosphere that we get in Welcome to Raccoon City. If you listen to our last review, I felt it. The first act was really strong with setting up this atmosphere.
Suspenseful, the city. I mean, there's almost nothing about Raccoon City in this one anyway, is there?
No.
There's none of that. There's none of the mention of the Raccoon, like barely anything.
And the Welcome to Raccoon City, the first act does kind of set up this kind of impending dread over this kind of town. You feel, and obviously shit's got to hit the fan, but it sets the pace for that quite well. Whereas in this, we kind of get there. They walk through the bit where the fucking boxes are that have the liquors in. And then we get the bit where with the cubed salmon, like you said, I like that. When you first said that, I was like, "What?" And I was like, yes,
Colin Salmon
cubed. That's his new movie.
I mean that scene is still fairly memorable scene, to be fair, when they're stuck inside the laser room.
Yeah.
And it happened a lot sooner in the film than I actually thought it did as well. I thought we got a bit more time, but I was like, oh shit, Colin Sam's out of this really quick. Because you get like 4 of them stuck in a room in the laser. You get the first one, and there is the cool, like the first one to get taken, the woman, like her head just like she's just there and it just kind of drops off.
Yeah, that's cool. Which yet again feels like a thing that happened at that time, because another thing that happened, and this is why I particularly loved horror films growing up, was you couldn't see a lot of these films because you were too young, but you could hear about them.
Yeah.
And it built up in your mind. And Ghost Ship, which came out around the same time, had a similar opening
scene
where the cheese wire cuts people in half, and then we pause and then they fall over. And it seems to be like a very, I don't know if it comes from that whole samurai thing where they quickly cut someone and then they fall down, but a lot of the films around that time kind of had that, and we get that, and it's quite a cool scene in this where the las's head falls off and then the guy's arm gets cut.
But again, it's all of this like ultra sci-fi almost. It's almost as if they're on some kind of futuristic, it's like Jason X or something, you know what I mean, like they're on this
another
futuristic spaceship. Is he in that?
Yeah, I'm 90%. No, I always
Jason. He's not in Jason.
I always think he's in Jason X, and he's
just
the one
been Colin Salmon in everyone.
I think any early 2000s film, Colin Salmon has to be in it.
Any random sci-fi element or something.
Yeah, I always thought he was
Colin Salmon popped up.
Yeah,
but it is like, so it's a cool scene, lasers, and then he's doing a good job to kind of dodge and like move over them, and like dodges over bits of his suit get cut, but he doesn't get cut. And then finally, he's about to get out, and then he's just by the door, and then he's like, "Oh shit!" And they finally manage to open the door, literally just seconds too late, as it grids him, and he gets cut into. But it's still like, you kept constantly in my mind just kept coming back to why. Maybe it's back in the day. I don't think I knew it as well. So when this film was out, I don't think I would have known the difference between Resident Evil and the Resident. I wouldn't have really noticed the difference enough to be like, oh, is that really not that game or something like that? But at the same time, now and now we've seen Raccoon City, you're just looking at it, going like, why have we got this ultra like sci-fi kind of? It has nothing to do, just because it's a futuristic virus. There's no other futuristic elements really that much in the game outside of it. There's not even like majorly high tech labs or anything like that. It's kind of just
And I mean, there's labs in it, and there is the scene in Resident Evil 4, which kind of pokes fun at this bit with the lasers. But yeah, again, that's like 2 years later, and up until this point, the labs in Resident Evil 1 and 2 were just like kind of dingy underground labs. They didn't really have high tech security. It was just key cards and that sort of stuff. So yeah, it feels a bit out of place, and it feels more sci-fi than it does horror. And it feels like it kills a large large parts of the cast
very quickly in that one scene. We use a lot of those in one scene, and then we're following the rest of the cast. And this is the thing, like the rest of the cast, that if there are other ones, then I've forgotten them, because I literally feel like they just start getting. There's a big gap, and then they're just getting off. But this is the thing, like in this film, I barely remember learning anything about these characters at all to give two shits about any of it. Like there's a scene with the and I'm blanking on his name. He's like the army guy. I think he's kind of like Mexican heritage kind of thing.
Is it JD? Because there's Michelle Rodriguez, who
not Michelle Rodriguez. I remember Michelle because I remember her being always saying that she's fairly badass in this film. She's all right. Again, I've overestimated that in my mind as well, because I thought she did more than she actually does in this film. I remembered her being quite a badass character.
I always thought she was kind of badass.
She's pretty cool. I just can't. I didn't quite see it like the way I expected to.
Yeah.
I was trying to have a quick look, just scanning who it was, but I can't actually
There's JD. Is it her mate?
Yeah, I think it must be her mate. The one that JD. Almost sacrificed himself go.
I can't remember.
He kind of gets up on the thing, but then he comes back later and he is on the train at the end. Is that JD?
No, that's not JD. No. That's I can't remember his name. It's like what's his name? Fucking Chad Kaplan, I think his name is, maybe. Kaplan, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Kaplan.
Yeah, he's the one who kind of sacrifices himself.
But then actually kind of comes back kind of later. Yeah. But it was just kind of, I think, like, they were all like, you had a scene like that when he's like, one of the scenes that I actually really remember when they're crawling over the top of the pipes and the zombies are all hoarding underneath kind of thing, kind of like at the time it was kind of a cool to have like a big horde of zombies. This is, to be fair, when zombies were not as in fashion as they became.
No, I mean...
This is before 28 Days Later, when a big resurgence really happened with the zombies. And this was kind of like an early kind of one, but these aren't really like what I'd call... It doesn't feel like full-on zombies. They don't feel that terrifying as zombies. No. They just feel like a horde of people. It doesn't feel like they're ever a major threat. Like, when they get near them, like a good film, zombies would have literally torn some of these people apart, but they kind of easily get, I'm just going to push it. I'm free.
And that's the thing is, in Resident Evil 1, I mean, when you go down into the nest, the outbreak happened and then it slowly spread. That's why people look like they're kind of rotten and they've eaten each other and they've taken chunks out of each other. Whereas in this, they just seem like, I think I'm trying to find the comment on the Twitter at CMTH podcast, but Scaring Sam podcast, who released episodes on a Thursday, said that like when they most recently watched it, they just kind of felt like the extras were just like people around with like makeup on bumbling around. That
is. There's no real direction to them here. They are just kind of there. You've got even like back to that like Kaplan scene when he's like he crawls up onto the pipe kind of thing, because he's the one that doesn't quite make it. So Alice just gets across, and then Kaplan's and realizes he's kind of stuck, so he goes over to the pipe at the side. And you've got like this one extra character kind of crawling up, but it's like nothing really happened. He takes forever to crawl up this pipe, and he's just like he literally is like some bad actor just like trying to crawl himself up. Like, but it's like, what do I do next? I'm still just moving. Am I meant to catch him or not? Am I meant to go? Or like, what am I doing? But then you've got like that. That's what I mean. Like, you've got this scene with Alice, and then she lets a tear roll down her face because Kaplan's like. sacrificing himself, and it's like I was like, where was the character moment for this? Why the fuck does she give to? She barely remembers her life. Why does she suddenly care about this group of stealth guys that have come into? Like, really, do you attachments that easily? Like, I was just like, where's this? Like, who's this for? Who's this shot and scene for? That Alice is suddenly like a sad, relatable character or something. When it's like at this point, she's kind of just as blank slate as she is in her mind.
Yeah, and that's when when we see the first zombie, you know, the woman in the lab coat, which is fucking hilarious. Welcome to Raccoon City. We get a very faithful reproduction of the iconic first zombie in Resident Evil. The thing that gave me nightmares. Beautifully shot, looks great. In this film, do you know what it reminded me of? I watched it and it reminded me of Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah,
when he's like, when he says, Shaun, there's a girl in the back garden. You fucking get off me, you pissed up nutter. It seemed like that because it's just a girl, it's just a woman in a lab coat.
That's what I mean.
There's no viscera, there's no gore or anything.
Yeah, the comedy side of it is very much here, kind
of. And then, and that's the problem. Is like.
It is that kind of like, it's almost what Shaun of the Dead was taking the piss out of in a way, like that kind of Dawn of the Dead, because obviously Shaun of the Dead was like 2004, which I always remember that because it's the same year that Dawn of the Dead got a thing, and I remember hearing it. I remember hearing people on like talk shows were saying like, and we've got the cast of Shaun of the Dead on, but I knew that Dawn of the Dead was coming out. I had no fucking clue what. Shaun of the Dead became like a huge thing, but no one really knew what it was until it like word of mouth made it like, this is fucking really good. So I remember hearing it, I'm being like, I think I remember saying to my mum, like, they got that wrong. Like, the stupid presenter got it wrong. It's Dawn of the Dead. Why the fuck are they calling it? I didn't know what the fuck it was. But like those two films with 28, those are kind of the main films that made the zombie like rise again. But it's that shit level of like, they just don't get it. They just look at the zombies in like, say, Romero's, which, you know, some of them are great and some of them were just like huge actor and extras.
Yeah. But this has got
it's like you looked an extra in the background and went, that's a zombie.
But this is a budget of 33 million, you know?
Yeah.
Even Welcome to Raccoon City had less of a budget and the zombies look better. Whereas I mostly look better. Whereas in this one, you could tell, I mean, apart from the zombie, which has got like half its head missing.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. Apart from that, all of the zombies just look like
the only things in this film that I would say were better done than Raccoon City is the dogs are better in this film.
I'd agree on that.
The I know, because it's real dogs with like costume, which I guess some people might disagree with that, with the dogs and stuff, which is fair enough. But the CGI kind of dog in Raccoon City was one thing where it was like, when you got close up to it really didn't look very good.
No, I agree with you on that.
And I'd also say, for a fair point, even though they turned it into a bigger monster, I'd say the liquor's more interesting here than it was in.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that.
And it's the liquor as the main big bad monster, even though it gets basically a very similar. This is a major comparison: is the liquor and the Dr. Vesker's, as I can't remember what the actual monster's called.
Birkin, yeah.
The Birkin, not West. I always mix those two up.
It's okay. It's okay.
That is a very similar scene at the end of this film.
Yeah,
which we can come back to that like later if you want. But it's that's a comparison that's definitely there, where we've both got two set on the trains with two big monsters, two which are both over fairly fast. Except I would say this Resident Evil's one is done better than Welcome to Raccoon City's. It's weird that there is this very similar scene in it because it's not a scene out of the game. Is it? Is the train scene out of the game?
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. They have taken one similar scene, changed the monster out, but it's just very similar. The pacing, the way it happens, the shots. But I'd say that this one's slightly more interesting than the one in Raccoon City, which just felt like as we said, like a rushed and
it was very rushed,
not well done ending.
Yeah. But just
jump back.
Yeah, before we get there, Monkey. Just kind of going back to what I was saying about the first zombie that we see. It just looks like it just looks really poor for a film that 33 million is a good budget, you know. It's a decent budget for a film like this.
To get some good either CGI or prosthetics, some good prosthetics in there, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it just doesn't make sense because the whole, even if we're using Romero as an example, once he got to say, I'd say more specifically, Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
Once he got to that, and once he even got to Day of the Dead, we started to see some zombies that did look like they were decaying and did look like they'd been rotting, and even stuff like like Fulci zombies and stuff like that have something to them. Whereas this is just
this is what I mean. This is what adds to that kind of like that blandness that I talked about. Is like it's literally as if it was trying not to possibly, like it's made for teenagers and it was trying its hardest not to make sure that it wouldn't possibly be in any way like scary or gory. It was trying its hardest for these just to be like fodder creatures, like just to be like taken out or hit or punched, but nothing more to them, because there is no real graphic like nature to them. There is like, it's just so bizarre that you'd like keep them so like but basic kind of thing, like basic human, like it's really like a strange choice, and it kind of even further shows how little they actually were trying to make a zombie film compared to an action film with sci-fi elements.
It feels like they, instead of going, we're making a 15, how far can we push it, it was almost like, okay, we're making a 12, oh, we've ended up with we've just got a 15, all right, let's keep it like that.
Well, because I would literally that this could almost verge on a 12-8 to me.
Yeah,
like definitely. This is like because there is no like. There's a scene when is it JD the one that
I'm gets
surrounded by them?
I'm going to get to that because the first zombie that we see bites Rain, and then it gets shot in the legs, no blood, by JD, and then it gets fucking pelted with bullets by Rain.
Yeah,
it goes flying back like it's in a fucking like some weird film, which just felt so out of place. And there was no blood or anything. And then obviously all the zombies come, and the one bit I did like about that scene was that we do get the scene where with the elevator, because it's been a while since the start, so you kind of forget a little bit about the zombies being in the elevator, and then when all of the zombies pull JD in, it's a cool scene. But yet again, I remembered his death being very similar to Darren, whatever his name is, deaths in Shaun of the Dead.
When he gets pulled out and gets ripped apart.
That's how I remember it. Instead, it's still very bloodless, and he just gets like taken down.
Yeah, and just kind of gets surrounded more than kind of. You don't really like, unless I'm misremembering. I don't remember seeing it a lot after that.
No, he just gets pulled down, and then even when we see him later, when he's been reanimated, he doesn't have any bite marks on him.
Which again, to be fair, this link does actually also go over to the new one as well, which is what was one of my slight problems with it, was that I felt like the new one could have also been far more gory.
Oh yeah,
like we had a similar. We had
Richard Aiken stuff.
Yeah, we had a whole similar. He was like surrounded like that, and again, the film is the Welcome to Raccoon City, to be fair, is more body horror gruesome at times. And more the way that they've changed and stuff. So that is, but it is again a fairly bloodless film. Like. People get their head taken off, but it's all very much off screen and things like that. You don't really see like the blood and the gore very much in it.
Not as much.
I would have liked to have seen it a little bit more. I'm not saying that Resident Evil itself as a game is that gory, but I think if you're translating it to screen, and it's almost like, if we're gonna go for it, let's go for it. You know what I mean?
That's it. And it was very, Resident Evil was fair. It's very much, you could even when it was pixelated, you could see that the zombies were covered in blood, and I go back to as I mentioned last week, I go back to the cutout of the RPD zombie. You could see his bone from where he'd been eaten away. A lot of the zombies, you could see discolored skin from where they'd been bleeding from, bite marks, that sort of stuff. When you were getting bitten, there would be blood gushing from you, and you could blow
it was more. It was a lot more gory than anything we've had in either adaptation. Really, isn't it?
And I don't know, this for me, this bit was like, oh yeah, I like, and that's what I mean. It's just a film made up of some cool shots like JD getting dragged into the elevator, and then them in the dog scene could have been cool. But what should have happened, this is for me, if I could go back, I wouldn't have put Alice in the film. I would have got rid of her, and I would have just kept the SWAT team. And then when they went into the scene with the dogs, I would have just had somebody die then, because that's a really cool.
Yeah, the dog bit is one of the few effective parts. Not the part when Alice starts like kicking and shooting. It wasn't that part.
No.
That's cool. It's the fact that dogs chasing was one of the few bits where like, oh, these actually look scary. These actually look quite well, like a good adaptation of the game.
And they were used quite well.
Why isn't someone being torn apart by these dogs?
In the second one, they were used quite well. We see somebody get killed by one of the dogs. One of the USMC guys gets killed by one of the dogs. It's off screen, but the implication of it's quite cool. And that's my problem, is like we then get this random scene where Alice is with the dogs and she like breaks the neck of the guy who was looking after the dogs, who was obviously dead. And then a dog runs at her and she slow motion runs along a wall and boots it in the head, which yet again 10-year-old me was like, oh, it's so cool. 30-year-old me is like, what?
Why are we doing it? Why?
And then it's just like a bunch of other dogs come out. You're thinking, oh, like, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And then we just see like bang, 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 bang.
Run out of bullets, and then she like throws or hits the dog. Like that. It's like,
and it kind of it ruins the moments for me. Like I always remember watching this bit with when I used to be into wrestling a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And there was a bit where Randy Orton would always do his RKO out of nowhere. It was really cool. There was one random episode of Raw I was watching, and Randy Orton was against Cody Rhodes, both amazing wrestlers, and Cody Rhodes just randomly jumped off the ring, the middle ring, the middle what's it called? They whip him into. What? Oh, the ring belt, whatever it is. The turn. The ropes.
Ropes. I'm gonna go with ropes. I literally was thinking ropes. I thought that's too obvious.
Ring belt.
Whatever you're trying to like say is obviously not ropes, because that would be a very obvious word.
The ring belt. The ring belt. Yeah. He jumps off the ropes, and then instead of going into move, he just holds his head forward to get RKO'd, and it's that kind. The ring belt. It's that kind of thing, like when it's like you see how something's done and you're like, that made no sense for them to do that, you know?
Why are we spending our time doing it?
And then when we get into the tunnel scene, which could be a cool scene, why is Alice martial arts fighting these people? In the Matrix, in John Woo films, it always made sense, because they were kind of these hard-boiled detective films mixed with martial arts films. It's kind of like you take it on form when everybody in like a Bond film, all of the henchmen know martial arts. You're not like, oh, why do they all know that? It's something that you just accept.
Yeah, they're just trained killers.
They're trained killers. And then in the Matrix, they know it because they just download it to their brains. They download
their information, yeah.
Whereas in this, Alice is just judo throwing zombies.
Well, she's just and in the first one, it's kind of just more like kind of said or implied that she's just one of the guys that are in there to do it. She's just like another kind of agent.
Yeah, but none of the other guys do.
Why the fuck does she? Yeah, none of the rest of them can do stuff like that. And I know that who like the people who love these films, the people who still are in 15-year-old mode.
I don't think there's anything wrong against.
There's nothing wrong with liking them. It's enjoyable. I'm sure lots of people are like, but it's like it's told later on that she's like this super. But why though?
But
why is she a clone super soldier? Why is our main character in a Resident Evil film when we've got more than enough interesting stuff? Why do we need them to be this super soldier or this superwoman? Like, just to kind of talk about like the rest. Now, I don't believe I've seen all of them. I'm pretty sure. I know I've seen the second one, and again, I mean, part of me kind of now wants to go and rewatch it only because I'm wondering, could it be any better than this? Like, because I also know it's got Nemesis in it. I'm like, could it be any better than this? Like a little bit better than this? Because this was not nearly as good. And I remember seeing Extinction, the third one, in the cinema, and fairly enjoying the kind of desert kind of setting and stuff like that. And then I remember, I think after that, that's when I zoned out. I think I might have seen the fourth one, but I don't remember it because that's when it went full on like sci-fi spandex suits, jumping off of towers while shooting robots that also have zombies that have whatever the fuck, I don't know, dogs riding fucking
dogs riding horses, all sorts.
That's what I mean. Like all I remember, and then it had like I know it had poor imitations of the actual characters from the game, where they were basically just lookalikes with names. And that was it. That was all their surface level character was to them. Apart from that, they were basically like, they might as well have been CGI because that's how wooden and poor they were.
Yeah.
But as I said, I haven't seen. Part of me, again, wants to just kind of go through. Before I watched this one, part of me wanted to go through and just do the whole franchise, just so I know I can like close the book on that and say, well, like what it was. This one has kind of now turned me off the idea of doing that because I wouldn't sit through this film again.
No, I remember preferring the second one.
I feel like the tone of the second one, I know there's more characters to do. It's more kind of city based. It's more fun. It's got Nemesis. It's got more action. Yeah. I remember Nemesis being that's one character that looked fairly good in live action. I remember he only is in it for a short amount of time. And I know he's also he is the mutation of the...
I can't remember his name. Brad?
I thought it was Matt.
It might be Matt. It could be
or
Brad.
Dan. I knows.
Matt.
Guy. Yeah, it's Matt Addison.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bloke out of Ugly Bay.
Yeah.
That's all I know. That's literally it.
That's my problem.
That's what I mean. They give Nemesis some kind of backstory because there's that very tacked on, take him to the Nemesis program or whatever, like as if, Okay.
And the problem is, the end of this film sets up a really cool sequel when she wakes up in the laboratory and she goes out and then all the streets are full of cars and then we have the newspaper saying the dead walk and then she gets the shotgun and it sets up a really cool film. It's just such a shame that biggest problem with
wasn't that ending scene would have been so much better if that was the beginning.
Yeah.
And she has amnesia or whatever the fuck. Fine. She doesn't know what's going on. But in the middle of a city trying to survive while that's happening, I mean, basically, they would have been ahead of time and they would have basically done a kind of 28 days later. Not as well done, but it would have been like, I've got amnesia, I don't remember, I'm in the middle of a big city and here are fucking zombie-like creatures. Yeah. That would have been more interesting than this underground sci-fi lab, whatever.
Yeah. My main thing is it blatantly rips off better films.
Yeah.
And it commits the ultimate sin of a film for me. And that's a film being boring. Like I can take a bad film.
Yeah.
I will sit through a 2-hour film which is fucking awful because it might be funny. It might
have good elements.
It might have good elements to it.
Yeah, we've talked several times about watching like Trolls 2 is an absolutely atrocious film.
Yes,
but it's fucking hilarious. Yeah. It's great.
But but then you have the ultimate sin that a film can commit is just being boring around the table.
I think, it is. But it's just like this. It's boring dialogue. It's boring bland action. It's boring horror. It's boring characters and actors who look like they're bored doing the film.
Yeah,
like it's all of those across the board. It's just like boring. Like it's dull and bland. There's nothing where they've kind of made it out specifically like look exciting. And to be fair, I had a little bit of a problem with Welcome to Raccoon City for a similar thing where I felt like, sadly, it's a case of, yes, you're adapting a game, but you're adapting a game from the 90s. Therefore, you've adapted the zombies like the 90s. And zombies have come quite a long way since then and been more interesting and detailed. Yeah. And the zombies in there were not that interesting. A few like great scenes, like we said, aside, for the most part, I found
Oh, that's my Netflix.
For the most part, I found that even in Welcome to Raccoon City, at times, not all of them, there were some great scenes, but the general hordes of zombies I found to be still quite lacking and not overly scary. I found the suspense of the film more scary, or the occasional singular zombie, like the woman in the window, the glass and stuff like that, or like that, as you said, the perfect recreation scene. That one, like, was great. But when we got them in big hordes and things like that, it felt like all of that mystique of them was gone.
Yeah,
and they didn't use it very well.
That
was the bit when it got a bit bland. So it's not that certain scenes weren't good, but again, so that's the same here, where we've kind of. But this is worse because it's kind of like there are no standout for the zombie really for the most part.
Yeah.
I think that's a good time to. We've said the dogs are better. I think it's a good time to go. Let's jump. We get the twist of James Purfoy's character, whatever his name is. That Spencer. Spencer is. Was the baddie all along. You get the whole scene of him, like we did see him at the beginning when he pushed past someone, but we just didn't realize it was him. And he's the one that threw the violin, that very kind of very techno, almost 90s slow-mo, like Michael Bay kind of, boom, the virus is released. This whole kind of, it was me all along kind of thing, which again means fuck all to us because we don't know fuck all about the relationship. We see him banging Alice at one point, whatever. He's doing all this stuff. He seems like an asshole character. He's the guy. Like, if you know the actor, I'm pretty sure anyone would have guessed it because I'm pretty sure he's played several roles like this, the same kind of asshole character. I know. He's also done a lot better things than this, but we get that whole twist, and then he runs off, and we get the whole. We get the computer system, which kind of feels like it's meant to be like Birkin's daughter or something like that, like some kind of weird twisted version of like the Red Queen, but it's also a little girl that's in the thing, and I think the little girl at one point says that she was based on her creators or something, as if it's like daughter, Birkin's daughter is this in this form.
It's supposed to be.
Or whoever the fuck it's meant to be. But that's just an extra element added in, and she says, I've been bad, and that's when the liquor's kind of implied it's been released and kind of things like that. And he runs off. This is one of the few kind of more gory scenes we actually get, is when the liquor kind of comes down and attacks Spencer.
But even then it's kind of...
But on the camera you get like more of a blood, because he is kind of covered where the back of it's kind of been ripped out kind of thing. It's one of the few that looks a bit more gory anyway. But again, we get it from a distance where we just see him screaming on the camera. So he doesn't really get much to it. It's like he's there, then you see the tongue, and then we just see like a screaming in the distance kind of thing. So it could have been quite a cool death scene. But again, like just kind of like actually in Welcome to Raccoon City, where we had the lifted him up and then like head, it would have been cool to see him a bit more or something. Like it's kind of that same kind of thing. And we've got all the characters kind of, and they're trying to get the is it the not the
antivirus,
antidote.
The cure,
antidote is what I was looking for. I was going to say antivirus, and I was like, not antivirus, it's antidote.
I can't believe I said ring belt instead of ropes. You could tell my brain is just fucked at the moment.
So yeah, we get that whole thing, and then they're trying to escape, and they board the train as their only way out. And this is again where we get this comparison. This is one major comparison where we had Birkin arriving and coming after the train, and then we've got the liquor who we see kind of jump onto the train. And we get this whole like it arrives, and we've got several characters in one part of the carriage and another person driving. Again, very similar. Like we had Jill Valentine was the one driving it. This one we have whoever the fuck this character is. Kaplan's the one driving it. He's come back. He's all right. Michelle Rodriguez's character is turning into zombie basically, slowly bit by bit. But the difference I'll say here is, although yes, dated CGI, which I wouldn't say is a million miles though, like the CGI wasn't perfect on like the liquor. They're much smaller in Welcome to Raccoon City than here. Here it's more been made into like the big bad monster.
And it's more dog-like, isn't it? It's kind of more like a little dog in its kind of build, And it's...
But that was one thing in Raccoon City we said, both with the liquor and with Birkin's final form, were two things that felt really disappointing. Like
definitely.
There was no build up to it. Something like, I can't say there was really a build up here, but I found this at least slightly more. Maybe it's just because the film in general hadn't given as much.
Maybe
this scene felt a little bit more interesting than I felt the Raccoon. I felt the Birkin bit really was a low point in the Raccoon City to me.
Well, I'm guessing.
It didn't look visually good either. Like,
no.
he didn't look good.
I'm guessing it's because, I mean, for me, apart from, we don't get any build up to the liquor in Welcome to Raccoon City until they get into the orphanage and we see the lights moving. The lights.
That's really cool.
The lights is a cool scene, but again, we don't have any context for the liquor. The idea in the in Resident Evil 2 is that the liquor is like living tissue that's been injected with the T virus, so it's something that's been made in the labs, and it's just it's escaped, and I think it does feed on T virus, so that's why it will attack zombies and eat them, and obviously attack people. But we don't get any build up for it.
It would have been awesome seeing it killing some zombies, it would have been awesome, and stuff like that, like taking them out.
And then with Birkin, we get him in the first act, and then we don't see him, so we don't really. It feels like we don't get to develop him as a villain, and unless you really kind of love the games like me, you don't really understand his motivations or anything like that. So that was disappointing in Welcome to Raccoon City. Whereas I think in this, we kind of, when they first go through the labs, they look into the cage or the box or whatever it is, and we see the brain and stuff like that. So we have and we see it escape, and we have a little bit of it.
We get a few little scenes of it kind of like going around different places, I think.
So whilst we don't we don't get a whole lot about it, it's very much the main villain.
It's because we've got used to, in this film, if you're watching it, you've got used to the idea that you're getting very shallow versions of everything. So the fact that we get this kind of character popping up is more just like, oh, here's like a big boss kind of thing. Like, here's a thing expected. It's one thing they've actually taken from the game as well. It's one of the few things that's actually from the game, even if in a bigger form. And Alika's not really a main bad villain in the game itself, but here it is. It's like, okay, fine, so we get that whole trade scene where it comes down, but again, it's just the way they're fighting it and stuff. It just feels a little bit more like an actual attack. Like Matt gets scratched and things like that. He gets attacked by it, which is implied in the sequel, I believe, that's part of what happens with the mutation of Nemesis. It begins from that kind of thing. But you've got Michelle Rodriguez's character changing, so you've got that extra kind of element in the room, and they're using things like the metal poles and stuff to kind of push it. And they're kind of working together to come up with a plan to get it, instead of that really random.
Lisa Trevor just sparks it.
Oh, with the liquor and that, I mean the Birkin.
Anyway.
The Birkin, where we just get the really random where what's his name comes in with a rocket launcher. Leon comes in with a rocket launcher. It's just like, okay, what? Why? Okay, that's fine. But then it's the fact that then that's it in the Welcome. This one you get a bit of I kind of prefer that they managed to like blast it and get it down into they open the chute of the floor. It's like they've got a plan. Whereas in Welcome to Us, it seems like they had no plan, and just so happens he's got a rocket launcher. That's almost like, I'd almost expect, really, we should have. The film's almost flipped the logic, and then we'd have a good scene. Because we'd have the characters we've just followed in Raccoon City working together properly to solve this problem. Like in the game, like they have to find a way to stop it. Like open the trap on the door seems like a game logic. Whereas in this film, Alice running up and, I don't know, karate kicking it and then pulling out a rocket launcher out of nowhere, that would perfectly match the logic of this Resident Evil film. So it's like we've twisted. I don't know where the guy for Welcome to Raccoon City thought that the random part was a good idea, because it could have been a really cool kind of boss fight. Like, we're inside a room. How can we work together to dodge, move, and get past it? But it doesn't give us any of that in Raccoon City. And at least in this one, it has the whole, open the door of the floor, pulls it down. You even got the tongue kind of like stuck and stuff like that, where they've kind of trapped it and it gets like ripped apart.
And then Rain becomes a zombie.
And you've got the attack and you've got to stop them. There's just a lot more tension in this scene than there is in the Raccoon Cities. It is one scene. This and the dogs are the only ones I can think of that are better than what we get in Raccoon City.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. Other than that,
those are like the dog scene I wouldn't necessarily take out. I just wish we had a better dog in Raccoon City. It would have been then it would have been quite good, because the scene was quite good.
The scene was good, like you said, when it was kind
suspenseful and stuff like that, minus the whole I said last time my problem with the magical the magical savior coming out of nowhere several times across the film. But apart from that, it would have been quite a cool kind of scene to have
an actual dog with
an actual dog, and same again. It would have been quite cool that we didn't have this just rush at the end with the whole. And then again, one other thing actually is I'd say because of that, this Resident Evil actually ends on a better note where I'm really excited to see a next one.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. Like I said, it sets it up.
It sets it up really cool. Whereas I think the Raccoon City, this one really loses steam right at the end there, especially.
Yeah.
Like it's lost some steam in the third act anyway.
Yeah.
But in the end here, like when they're just walking out and we know Raccoon City's destroyed, it just feels like a waste in the Welcome to Raccoon City, the new one.
Yeah.
It just feels like a bit of a waste. It's kind of like, I kind of actually would have preferred, like, because you've got Jill Valentine there as well, as we mentioned, it feels like the whole, like, Nemesis and stuff like that you could have had in the city and stuff, because that takes place alongside it, like you mentioned last time. And now it's like, well, you had Jill Valentine here the whole time, so we can't do that separate story. You've wasted that now. So where are you going to go with it? Like, what? Exactly. They're going to have to go off to another random location, and therefore... It's like you spent so long building up Raccoon City. Why did you destroy it? What was the logic there?
Especially the first film. If you'd have, and that's why, like I said last time, I think when I heard about that they were merging the two films into one, I kind of said to myself, well, actually, that makes sense because I don't think you'd be able to flesh out the first film into it. And then, honestly, after reading the Romero script, it would have made more sense to have one as a film and then 2 and 3 you could put into one because we've already established Jill Valentine in the first film. We could have had Chris Redfield be there because I mean in the actual games he goes away, but you could have had him there and then you could have just played it out and then you'd be able to introduce Nemesis, you'd be able to potentially introduce Birkin, you've got more to play with.
Yeah. We have literally, with these two Resident Evil adaptations, we've almost got the opposite problems. Where one has done so little of the source material that it is literally almost like, well, this isn't really even Resident Evil. It's got ideas.
If you'd have changed the name of the T-Virus, and you'd have changed it to... something else. I'm not going to try and make it.
Change it to Ring Belt.
Change it to Ring Belt. And then I would have watched this film and been like, it's still a boring film, but...
It would have been just some 2000 sci-fi zombie film. There you go.
Yeah, what it really reminded me of is when they tried to do the Doom adaptation,
Oh yeah, there's. You see, I was thinking before when I was saying. I'm pretty sure that's. I'm not 100%. It might not be, but again, that feels very much like a Sony adaptation of a game, where it's literally Apart from again that I remember that Duva and that one I remember being more obviously bad, except for one awesome scene when they do the whole gun moving through and shooting the monsters. But that had the same problem of not respecting the source material.
Exactly.
Doom, I remember, has so many different cool kind of creatures, and in that film they all made them look exactly the same. These weird things. It's like, why the fuck are we doing this? Like, what a waste of a film this is.
And then going back to what you were saying, because I cut you off
let's jump to the opposite side where Welcome to Raccoon City has the opposite problem of barely using the source material. If anything, it overstuffs the source material. We can tell it's someone who loves the games, but sadly it's like someone who loves the games and wants every single moment to be in that first film. And it's kind of like, if you just held back a bit, cut out a couple of these characters, a couple of these bits, save them for a sequel, saved Raccoon City, so that in the sequel we could have had like, that's the build-up. This is like, and you could have done a low, like this, it was a fairly lowish budget, but you could have done a low budget first one, therefore giving you more chance at a sequel. Because you could have done just more the setup of Raccoon City and how people are changing and how Leon and Claire are kind of dealing with and not having to shove in the other characters so quickly.
And the first Resident Evil has plenty of iconic stuff that we could see done. Because, I mean, if we have loads of iconic stuff in there that they could have done. It would have been cool to see. So the set pieces are all there, But like you said, it's just overstuffing. It's like Gale the Snail, It's just mashing it. That eventually, it's too much. I mean, I would watch Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City again. I could kind of see it becoming, for me, a potential rainy day film. You know, like for me, a film that I'd stick on.
Yeah, I could definitely watch it again. I do. Yeah, I would give it definitely another go and stuff like that. I do think there was enough good in there, but we still sadly have not got that perfect Resident Evil. I would say that like Raccoon City, like this is a, I don't know, 2-star film, maybe less, 1.5. Raccoon City is probably very much 3-star for me. It's like right in the middle of.
I bumped it to 3.5 just because I love the games.
And it had some scenes that you absolutely adore. But as an overall film, I just felt like it is like a one that I would like say like, yeah, give it a go, but I wouldn't be like, oh, you're gonna love this.
Like you're gonna love it. No.
Like some people definitely won't. It's very much that, and I hopefully, I mean, if we do get a sequel to Raccoon City, then hopefully they learn from what they've seen in this. Because it could be quite cool, with the style they've made. I especially think, say, a Nemesis kind of adaptation would definitely give us a kind of cool film.
And I think
if they keep that suspense and make him a proper looming threat that constantly keeps coming, then they could really do well with that.
And what I did like about Welcome to Raccoon City is that it did start to explore that body horror element of Resident Evil.
Yeah,
and I think. Especially if you were to do a film with Nemesis in, that motherfucker has some nasty ass transformations, you know, and you have the opportunity to do some, horrendously horrible things.
I mean, there's still lots of other characters that weren't deemed in that, even in those first 2 games or first 3 games that haven't been mined yet. So there's loads of other characters, not just Nemesis, but other disgusting characters.
There was this. So, like, I am a massive fucking nerd for Resident Evil, and I went through a period of looking through. I can't remember the guy's name, but I'll try and remember for a future episode. And he does a lot about the cancelled Resident Evils. So like what the original concepts was, but he also does about the cancelled creatures in them. And it was either Resident Evil 2 or Resident Evil 3, but there was a really fucking grotesque character, which was a man that had been spliced with a spider. So it kind of had the legs of a man, but the upper body was more like tarantula, and it had so instead where the arms were. It had like more arms and arms coming out of its back. Had a human head, and there's all this scope to do this stuff with make these really grotesque, amazing body horror stuff that you genuinely, if you pulled it off well, you did some amazing practical effects. You could rival The Thing, because there's just so much beauty.
That's why I wanted it to be more graphic than it was. Yeah. I mean, I feel like they need to lean into it more and be like. Even if it means it needs to come back, but be lower budget, but lesser scenes, less of the action and more of just body horror film, then you could have some amazing. And we even mentioned, like, I think fans in general would have enjoyed this film more, literally, even if we were fucking following characters for like 15 minutes through different rooms. It would have been with different body horror things popping up and stuff. That would have been cool in a way to kind of really adapt it in that really true nature of like, we don't need to show all of that. No, we don't need it all because we could just follow them in certain scenes. Not all of it, no, but certain scenes just have a couple of long expended one style shots. One take shots would have been awesome in this film.
And that's the bit I said about Welcome to Raccoon City. I really did like was the first encounter with the zombie and the kind of following scenes. And I think Resident Evil has the opportunity for that.
We've got the Netflix one that is coming out, which is not a adaptation of because it's a prequel, I believe, of Birkin and all that. Like
I've heard so many different things.
I think it's meant. I'm fairly certain they've cast someone who's meant to be Birkin or the Wesker, the that kind of thing. So I believe it is meant to be, and it's meant to be a kind of different story. But it'll be interesting because a lot of people say that Resident Evil doesn't work as a film and that a TV series would be far better to adapt the games and the film and stuff to turn it into that and have characters that you follow in all these different. And some of the series would just be, say, like is it Resident Evil 4? Is it Leon in Resident Evil 4? Yeah. So like it could just be one of the series is more just one of the characters, or Claire and Claire and Leon in the first. you could see how it definitely would work well as like following them through the town, like a couple of episodes to kind of flesh out each series kind of thing. So that's interesting to see that we are getting. That's fairly soon because I've noticed it's come onto the list of like coming soon, but it's literally on the one where it's like on Netflix you follow the thing, and that means it's probably January, February from the look of it.
Do you know if you search Resident Evil,
you get the
search bar,
dogs.
Yeah, you get the dog, and because I searched it, and I was like, oh.
Then the dog on that. If that's what the dogs look like, it looks better than what it did in Raccoon City.
I thought it looked about the same, to be honest.
Yeah, but I think that's a purely CGI creation in that video, isn't it? And it's not, but it's almost like more of a promo one. So hopefully, if it looks a little bit better than that in the series. But it'll be interesting because I think that one is meant to be like before Raccoon City, but also kind of like what life in Raccoon City. You get a different view of it. But we've had a few different, and we've had like the not anime, but the animation ones, which were
I didn't like them. I'll be honest.
So we've had a lot of it. This has been mined a lot, but no one has got a perfect one yet.
No.
Right. I guess we've got the games to go back to.
Yeah.
That's the plus side. But yeah, Resident Evil 2002, very much not a great adaptation, to sum it up. And in general, just not a great film.
Just, like I said,
not great. Not
boring.
good.
I mean, if you want us to cover the rest of the films, and you don't like us that much, and you want us to torture ourselves with a retrospective.
I mean, remember what if you've listened to our Final Destination one. Imagine if we had to do that, but with Resident Evil, we were worn out and those were quite good. So and those were some quite good films, especially the fifth one. But by the time we did the fifth Final Destination, after doing it like back to back to back, we were pretty much like, oh fuck it. Like I believe if you watch that episode, we even cut ourselves off where we're like. We ran out of time on a live stream. It's like 2 hours, and we were like, "Oh shit, we can't finish it." What we said we were going to finish, and we were like, "Should we go back and finish?" We were like, "No, fuck it. Probably no one's listening at this point anyway."
Fuck it.
So I believe if we were doing all 7 or 6 of Resident Evils, we'd be like, "For fuck's sake, what else have we got to say? This is bland." Like because although I think 2 and 3 might actually get a bit better, I'm feeling maybe. I know for a fact that after that 4 fight, and I feel like we'll get even like that's like dumpster fire.
Yeah, it is, man.
So I might rewatch them. I might in another episode just quickly mention and say, I watched them, and I'll tell you if that's a meh or a kind of meh.
I'm gonna finish watching Heat, but I'm not gonna lie.
I'll finish watching. I'll go back and watch Heat. I'm not sure yet. And we're both seeing Spidey this week, so we're both excited for that.
And obviously, I guess that's
it. That's Resident Evil.
No
longer than we expected, so there you go.
Yeah. I thought we were going to finish about 50 minutes, but I mean...
To be honest, in the first 25 minutes, there was a lag there where we were starting to struggle to begin with. We built on it a bit more when we bring more comparisons that we said, but yes, that's our honesty here. That's us raw.
That's us raw. Red raw, man. And as always, if you've enjoyed the show, then... hit the subscribe button and leave us a lovely review on whichever listening platform you can. And we will see you next week as we discuss 3 of our favourite horror games.